Interested in supporting Blue Valley activities and athletics? All In BV offers businesses unique opportunities to get involved. From video boards and static signage at athletic events to elementary car pickup tag sponsorships seen by families every day. Your partnership directly supports Blue Valley students, athletes, and performers while giving your business valuable community visibility. Learn more at bluevalleyk12.org/allinbv.
I love Blue Valley because I feel a lot of support. It's a great community.
We are a people that believe in excellence, that believe in constantly striding for more.
I think that there's a lot of opportunities that I would have never explored on my own, and all of the teachers and staff here at Blue Valley make everything so much easier and more accessible.
Welcome to BV Unmuted. I'm Gillian Chapman, Superintendent of Blue Valley Schools. Thanks for joining us today as we preview the 2026 Kansas legislative session and share how state-level decisions impact our students, staff, and schools. Today, we'll break down Blue Valley board-approved legislative priorities, why they matter, and how our district is working to ensure every student has access to a high-quality, well-supported education. Today, I'm joined by Jan Kessinger, Board of Education President, Clay Norkey, Board of Education Vice President, and Jeremy McFadden, Blue Valley's Chief Financial Officer. Thank you all for being here today. Part of our role as leaders in education is to help our legislators understand the impact their decisions have on our students. Education is one of the many issues that legislators consider, and I would argue of the issues that they face that is the most essential. Their decisions also impact our community. This year, Blue Valley is advocating for several key priorities that our Board of Education and administration believe directly impact our ability to continue offering a high-quality education to our students and to be a destination district. I'd like to open this question up to all of you. We'll dive into each of our priorities, but first I want to ask, which one do you think will be the most critical for our students and staff in the year ahead, and why? Which one of you would like to start?
Well, I'll start. The fair and equitable school finance formula is, without a question, the top consideration for the legislature as they go into the 2026 session. Because the money is what pays us to be able to do what we do for the students. That's going to be the most critical one for our students and the staff ahead.
Well, certainly they're all priorities. I mean, that's why we have our standing positions and we have these 4 priorities. I have to agree with Jan. The legislature really needs to get the finance formula right. There are some things that can be improved upon it, but we don't want a whole lot of tinkering with it. So I think that's probably number one, but close behind it and connected to it is the special ed funding. This has been an issue that has been ongoing for so many years now. And we're at the point that if we don't get that special ed funding, we have to make some serious decisions about what we're going to offer in the future.
Jeremy, what would you add?
Yeah, great comments, Jan and Clay. I would also kind of expand how all of these are interconnected, the legislative priorities. School finance formula important, special education extremely important. What I think drives value in Blue Valley is the support and recruitment, retention of highly qualified staff. So with a sound school finance formula that's fair and equitable, and with proper special education funding, Blue Valley can continue to attract and retain highly qualified teachers and really provide value to our families, our students, and taxpayers in the area.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jan, can you talk through how our legislative priorities were developed this year, and why did we choose the positions that the board chose?
Well, it was a collaborative effort where the leadership team and the Board of Education, we first reviewed and pared down prior legislative priorities. We didn't want to have a laundry list. We wanted to be able to target just a few that were going to make a big impact on the students and on the district as a whole. So we did take a look at the past priorities, but more importantly, we took a look at our future needs. And what I really liked about it is we wanted to identify what was ambitious, yet attainable. We could have a wish list, but if we're not going to have any chance of having it pass the legislature, it wouldn't do us any good rather than say, well, that's what we wanted to do. No, what we've been able to do is identify what was ambitious yet attainable, and we prioritize the impact that our legislative priorities would have on students.
Great. Our first priority focuses on asking the state to establish a fair and equitable school finance formula and provide local school boards the authority and to access all available options within the state funding formula. You all three touched on the importance of this one. Jan or Clay, can you add to why this is so important to Blue Valley?
One piece of the school finance formula is the at-risk funding. And currently, Blue Valley is only getting 1% of the at-risk funding for the entire state. Yet, we have 5% of the student enrollment. A lot of folks look at Blue Valley, and we do have areas of wealth here in Johnson County. We certainly do, but we also have a lot of folks who are struggling. And they come to us with needs that we need to address so we can educate the kids. I mean, it all comes back to the students. As Jeremy said, he's tying it all together for the recruitment and retention for teachers, which is critically important. And why? Because of the students. So if we don't have the resources, if we don't have the good staff, the good teachers in front of these students, we're not going to get good outcomes, and they're not going to reach their potential. And we want them to reach their maximum potential for whatever that individual student can reach.
Just to give a history as to say, well, how did we get to this position where, we have to come up with a new formula? And understand that the state provides the bulk of our funding. About the base funding would be about 2/3 of our budget. The current school funding formula from the state is going to expire in January of 27. A task force in Topeka has been working on a new formula since January of 2025. They haven't come up with anything in particular yet. Historically, in the 2000s and the 2010s, there were multiple lawsuits that challenged the constitutionality of funding. The most notable were Montoy versus the state and Gannon versus the state. And repeatedly, they were challenged in court and found to be inadequate when it came to meeting the constitutional requirements for adequate and equitable funding. In 2017, the legislature passed the current formula, and the courts finally ruled it as being constitutional after 19 years of being unconstitutional. And it was a big boost to the schools throughout the entire state. It does allow a local option budget where districts can locally additionally fund up to 33% of the foundation aid from state. Now, even though we didn't list it as a priority, we would like to see that boosted up a little more for us. And special ed is not mentioned in the current formula, but it is required by another mandate, and the state and feds both fall short of what is required of them.
Thank you. I know people assume that in Blue Valley that we have enough resources. But in reality, Blue Valley ranks 257 out of 285 Kansas districts in per pupil state and federal funding. Jeremy, can you explain how this inequity impacts Blue Valley?
Yeah, Clay gave a sneak peek on kind of the difference between Blue Valley's overall student population comparative to the state and our funding with at-risk funding from the state. And so indicators of poverty drive the at-risk funding and the federal title funding. And when you look at technically what is an at-risk student, KSDE defines 12 different criteria, and I'm not going to read them all, but some of the criteria that is essentially defining what an at-risk student is a student not working on academic grade level, not meeting the requirements necessary for graduation from high school, has insufficient mastery of skills or not meeting state standards, is identified as an English language learner, has social emotional needs that cause a student to be unsuccessful in school, students with dyslexia, students in foster care, etc. So I think what we would like to see in Blue Valley is whether or not we have indicators of poverty in Blue Valley. Some of the criteria for serving at-risk students, clearly are here in Blue Valley. And so if we could lean into perhaps tweaking at-risk funding models that reimburse school districts for services they provide, whether it's math specialists, reading specialists, counselors, social workers, that would be I think, a more fair and equitable component to a future school finance formula that doesn't necessarily serving at-risk students tied to indicators of poverty, but more to the services we provide. So that would be a reason for the inequity and an improvement we think could be made.
For Jan and Clay, what would a greater local funding authority mean for our district in practical terms?
Well, the bottom line is local control, where we make decisions about our school district. It's not dictated by legislators in Topeka. We choose to be able to spend what the community is willing to spend, and gives us an ability to be able to respond to the higher cost of running a school district in Johnson County as opposed to other rural, less expensive areas.
Thank you. Anything to add, Clay?
Sure. I mean, we continue to ask the legislature for resources. We continue to let them know what we need. And if they are not going to respond, then we would like the ability to go and do some of those things on our own. We see folks out here all the time. They see capital projects going on. They see improvements, new building going up. And they ask, well, why aren't you using those funds for teachers? Why aren't you using those funds for resources inside the classroom? It's because we can't. Those are separate funds. Those are capital funds, most of which are raised locally because the voters wanted them. They voted for them. This gives us the ability to go after some of those teacher raises, funds directly into a classroom by increasing our ability to do that locally.
Thank you. It's helpful, I think, for listeners to understand the different buckets of funding and what can and can't be used in between the funds. And really all the decisions that the board makes are directly rooted in doing what's best for students. And I appreciate the focus that the board has. And when local decisions can be made, it's always better to have a local decision versus a decision that's made 100 miles away or 75 miles away or even farther away. You know best what the needs are of our students and families in this community. Let's talk about special education. Although Kansas statute says the state is supposed to fund special education at a 92% rate, it has failed to do so. As a result, Blue Valley has to cover that shortfall from its general fund. In 2025, that was over $16 million. Jeremy, what would that money have supported if it didn't have to cover the special education costs?
Yeah, this is probably a very short answer. It would be put back into teacher salaries, smaller class sizes, additional programming just for all of Blue Valley students. So it would essentially go to support the strategic priority of recruitment and retention of staff through higher salaries, smaller class sizes, those things.
Jan or Clay, how does this funding gap affect general education students?
The money that we put into special ed, $16 million, I believe last year, is taken away from the general fund. And that takes us away from putting money in the classroom, which is a real hot button for the same people who want to cut funding, which is kind of an interesting dichotomy. We would end up with bigger class sizes, less money in the classroom, and ultimately, and fewer electives, some of the many things that attract people to Blue Valley.
I think it's important that we start framing and we start thinking about special education funding as education funding. Because when, just as Jan said, when we are not being funded at the statutorily required level by the legislature, we start in the hole every year. And this year or last year, we started $16 million in the hole. So we had to pull that money out where we could have given teachers a 10% more raise. Their raise could have been another 10% higher if we would have had our special ed funding. We could have given them, used some of that for teacher salaries, and we could have actually lowered the mill levy. There's so many different things that we could be doing with that special ed funding because it affects every single student in the district. Every single student is affected, and we have to remember that it's, of course, we're going to take care of our special ed students. Absolutely. I mean, not only is it federal law that we do so, but it's the right thing to do, and Blue Valley is going to do the right thing. So we're always going to take care of them. It's just frustrating to take it away from the general ed kids when the legislature should be filling that gap.
I want to add that the base state aid per pupil that we receive in Blue Valley is approximately $6,000 per student. And when you look at the general fund transfer into special education to cover the deficit that the state is statutorily required to fund but are falling short is $16 million this year. Most likely it's going to be closer to $18 million. What that equates to is $1,400 for every single student enrolled in Blue Valley, comes immediately off that $6,000 base state aid per pupil. So if you look at our data and the programs and the things that we're able to offer, essentially we're doing that on $4,600 for every single student. And that's pretty remarkable, but it also speaks to what you were saying, Clay, that it is a system-wide funding challenge. And if we had the $16 to $18 million that we weren't automatically pulling into special education to fund that shortfall, we would have opportunities to really expand the programming that we already have for all students, lower class sizes, and afford to recruit and retain our high quality staff that we have. So I think it's important to take a look at that whole system-wide funding and recognize that it is a big challenge.
Something that's come up in some of our patron meetings with parents, they've asked, so if we've got this shortfall, why am I not feeling the pain right now? And the answer is, well, one of the answers is we've had a reserve fund. And because of the shortfall, we have been digging in, pulling money out of those reserves. And we are now down to less than a month's worth of reserves. There are no more reserves to pull from to cover this. So at this point, we've already started taking other steps and looking at, okay, do we really need to do this? Do we really need to do that? Consolidating positions. We're taking all those steps, but we're basically at the end of the rope because we have been kind of smoothing this over for as long as we can because we have excellent staff that have been able to do this. But we will start feeling the pain if that special ed funding does not start coming in.
Yeah. Thank you. Our third priority is to increase safety and well-being in schools. We're asking legislators to support three things. Update the statute to ensure concealed carry is not permitted on any school district campus, both inside the building and on the district campus, which is the exterior of the building, to fund mental health supports, and fund school safety infrastructure separate from the education budget. Jeremy, Blue Valley spends currently over $8 million annually on school safety. What does that number include, and how does it impact our ability to invest in student learning?
Yeah, so the $8 million annually is coming from several different funds. We use general fund dollars, bond dollars, capital outlay dollars to make sure that the safety and well-being of our staff and students is, obviously a huge priority. The things that those dollars go towards is our SRO services with the Overland Park Police Department and the Leawood Police Department. We have campus police officers, threat assessment training, doors and locks, building access upgrades, a lot of capital projects focused on just building pinch points, appropriate hardware for safety in our buildings. We also invest heavily in camera, security system alarms, crisis alert systems. So we make a pretty substantial investment every year focused on safety and well-being in schools.
This priority reflects something broader than just infrastructure. Jan or Clay, why is it essential that students feel safe and supported in order to learn?
Well, I think it goes back to the fundamental theory of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the first need we have is for survival. We need to eat. Second is for safety and security. And as we work up the pyramid on Maslow's hierarchy, you will focus on these in order. If you are not feeling, or if you're not surviving, if you don't have food, you're going to focus on getting food. The next then is that safety and security, shelter. And as you move up, you've got social and then esteem, respect, confidence, but then self-actualization. And you say, well, what is that? And it's really being able to achieve your full potential. So if I'm worried about my safety, I am not concerned about reaching my full potential. We only focus on the unmet needs as we go up the hierarchy, and that's critical. I cannot imagine being in a classroom and being distracted because I just don't feel safe.
Thank you. Our final priority is about investing in people. We're asking the legislature to revise KPERS 3 to be competitive with other states and to explore solutions to rising benefit costs that are impacting educators across Kansas. Jeremy, from a financial perspective, how are rising benefit costs impacting both the district and our staff?
Yeah, that's a line item in our budget that continues just to cost significantly more dollars each and every year, outpacing just regular inflation. Our healthcare renewals, every year we go through a process for group healthcare, and it actually starts above 10% every year. And we work with our broker to figure out, okay, what can we do to negotiate that down? What can we consider on plan design changes? Essentially, how do we manage that cost? And it really is a tough thing to do every year, especially with all the other priorities of the school district. But at the same time, it's such a critical component of our competitive compensation and benefit package for our staff. So, if we spend over $30 million a year on healthcare in Blue Valley for our staff, we've got to figure out how to manage that. And today we spend over $10,000 per year on a single healthcare benefit. And if we're dealing with 10% annual cost increases in the matter of 6 or 7 years, that could be $20,000 if we don't take any action. So it's such a big part of the overall compensation package. So if there's things that can be done in Topeka to, maybe defray some of the costs of high cost claims, some of the claims that, approach upwards of $1 million or more, are there things that can help us kind of manage those, annual increases that we deal with each year?
This priority speaks to more than just salaries. It's about compensation, retirement, and stability. Through the strategic plan process, the board heard loud and clear through the community input that compensation is really important for retaining great educators. Jan and Clay, can you tell us more about why that is so important and why total compensation is so important for retaining and recruiting our future educators?
Well, it starts with compensation, I think, and it goes all the way back to kids in high school deciding what they want to do, what they want to be when they grow up. So a lot of these kids now, they went through COVID. Everyone graduating right now, they went through that. They saw the turmoil in the schools. They saw folks getting upset at teachers sometimes, at staff. There are a lot of unpleasant times for all of us. And they're looking at that and saying, gosh, is that what I want to do? And then they look at the pay structure and they say, that's it? That's what I want to go to 4 years for, when I could go and do another degree and make so much more coming out. I don't have to deal with all the various things in education. So at that level, if we have fewer kids going into education, we're going to have fewer kids coming out. And fewer kids coming out means fewer and fewer teachers. So we have to go all the way back and look at what is going to attract some of these kids to come into the profession. And I believe we need to continue not only to recruit and retain teachers, but to advance them all the way through college and all the way through their careers. And that's through compensation. That's through elevating them as the professionals that they are. Because if we have good quality teachers in front of our students, we're going to get so much better outcomes, even more so than class sizes, within reason, of course. But those small class sizes also help with teacher retention too. No teacher wants to get up with 50, 40, 35 kids in front of an elementary school classroom. So we want to continue to bring those down. So this piece touches so many others, and it really is central to getting the education of our students that they deserve.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what Clay said. We've got to make it a career, a primary career, not a fallback position. Well, I don't know if I don't get a position, if I don't get that job, I can always be a teacher. No, we want people to aspire to become a teacher, and it isn't just the money. It is what do you get from being able to raise those students so that they can achieve their potential? But what we hear a lot from outside sources is, well, we're failing our students. No, we're not. And we've got to do a better job of promoting the job that's being done by teachers so that students do want to become teachers as their primary goal.
If you look at all the different countries in the world that are really excelling and putting out well-educated students prepared to tackle the future, the one thing that they have in common are professional teachers, teachers that are respected by the community, that the career is sought after, just like Jan said, that this is something I really want to do because this is a big deal. And we're compensated appropriately and adequately so we can actually live in the communities where we serve.
Thank you. You both said it so well. And I want to share with you an email that I received this morning from a parent. And the parent is talking about how they are lamenting that today their daughter is having their final exam at CAPS. And through her CAPS experience, and I'm going to quote, she says, "This teacher has quite frankly changed our daughter's future for good. She has become our daughter's person the last 2 years and has inspired her in so many ways. I always worry about, this parent is also an elementary teacher, and says, as an elementary teacher, I have been so worried about the relationships my kids would make in middle and high school with their teachers, only seeing them for an hour or two a day. But this teacher and all of our teachers have made that connection and has helped my daughter make college and career choices, really solidified her desire to be a nurse and to work with students and children, and even helped with formal dress choices. That is what these big kids need and what all kids need. I've always felt that my daughter was safe and supported at CAPS and at her high school, and that this teacher was a big part of that from the very beginning." She went on to talk about how other teachers have really supported and loved her daughter, and she, as a parent, felt like that her teachers knew her daughter personally and made sure she was not just prepared for her CNA test, but also life experiences, work study, interview days, etc. What amazing resources. So this parent was thanking and just wanting to let me know and asked me to share with the board. So I'm one-upping it and sharing it with the community. And these are the kind of emails that often people take the time to share, but it's really life-changing. So I appreciate that, and I wanted to share that.
When I'm out, and I'm sure Jan hears this too, hear that all the time. The praise for our teachers that we have here in Blue Valley. That is just one example of many that we all hear.
And I tried to summarize. I mean, the email is really long, and I tried to summarize, but that's just how important our teachers are to individual students and to this community. Thank you all for an insightful conversation about these priorities and why they're so important to Blue Valley and how they help shape the future for our students and staff. As we wrap up, Jan and Clay, what's one message that you would want to share with lawmakers as they consider these priorities?
Well, it's easy for me to say education is our greatest asset. I worked at the Commerce Department for a while, and when we were attracting or trying to attract businesses to Kansas, they would not say, "Oh, well, what kind of a tax incentive can I get?" Or "How's the beach there?" Or how are the mountains? No, it was the number one question always asked was, what are the schools like? And that is our greatest asset, and that is where we should invest the most money.
The message to lawmakers that I would have is that we want to partner with you. We want to explore different ways that we can get the best outcomes for our kids together. So I invite them to come to Blue Valley, come visit our schools, come visit some of our special ed classrooms. Walk the halls. I will host lawmakers in some of our schools, and I know you would, yes, Dr. Chapman, and I know you would as well, Jan. So I invite them to partner with us and come visit.
Yeah. Thank you. we absolutely would extend that invitation. For our listeners, I hope this conversation has given you a deeper understanding of the issues impacting Blue Valley and also inspired you to advocate for your child and our schools. On our district website, you'll find the resources, including how to contact your state legislators and a sample letter and a template that you can download, customize, and send to your legislator. Just visit bluevalleyk12.org/legislative. That's also where we'll post testimony the district submits throughout the session. And don't forget to follow us on social media, where we'll continue sharing updates and dive deeper into the legislative priority throughout the spring. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, Blue Valley.
Want to see what learning looks like in action? Follow Blue Valley Schools on Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. From student success stories to behind-the-scenes moments, you'll get an inside look at how we are cultivating lifelong learners prepared to navigate their future with purpose. Get connected, stay informed, be inspired.